What's up, guys? It's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to an episode of the Hand of the Day. A few quick announcements before we jump into the hand. First off, if you guys want to submit your hands to me, you have hands you'd like to be reviewed on the Hand of the Day channel, you could simply click the link below. We created a brand new form and you'll be able to submit those hands. They go directly to me. I review all the best ones and pick them to review in future videos. So be sure to click that link below if you want to send your hands to me. Second, if you like my thought process in the Hand of the Day, you like these videos, you like my form of analysis, click the link below and get access to my hand reading system. It's absolutely free and it'll walk you through a step-by-step process that I use to make decisions in every hand of poker I play. It's available to you only at Conscious Poker. It's new stuff, it's really awesome content, and a lot of readers have gotten a lot of benefit from this free system. So enter your name and email, click the link below, and I'll send it right over to you guys. For now, let's jump back to the Hand of the Day.
Hand of the Day.
So this hand comes from $1, $2 no limit hold'em, and we're playing super deep stacked. We're $1,000 effective stacks in this game, which is 500 big blinds deep. So uber deep stack poker, and the cutoff opens to 15, which is a very big raise, 7.5x open, and we find ourselves on the button with 9-10 of spades. Now in this spot, facing a normal size open of something like $5 or $6, you know, a standard 2.5, 3x open, I might 3-bet here to $15 or $20, taking initiative in the hand, applying pressure on my opponent when we're really, really deep, and going about the hand that way. But when he opens 7.5x, I feel like that's going to change his range a decent bit. And most likely his range is going to be stronger, or it should be, simply because his risk to reward ratio is so much lower. He's risking $15 to win 3 instead of risking 6 to win 3, so his range should be stronger. Also, I don't really want to get 4-bet when I 3-bet because the pot's going to be so big that we're going to put in a lot of money pre-flop and it's not going to be as lucrative of a spot for me. Had he raised smaller and I got 4-bet after I 3-bet, I can effectively call and play the hand in position. So because of his raise size, I think I would elect to just flat call here on the button and play the hand in position that way. As played, the hero in the hand decides to 3-bet here to $50, which is a fine sizing. If you're going to 3-bet, you have to make it a size that your opponent could fold theoretically pre-flop. You don't want to make it something like 35 or 40 or 45. It's just too small. I would go 50, maybe even 60, and really apply the pressure right away. We make it $50. Our opponent now flat calls, and we go heads up to the flop. With a pot of $103, the flop comes down 9-5-3 with 2 hearts. Good flop for us, flopping top pair. Our opponent now checks, and here we have a choice between betting or checking. Some of the time here, I would elect to check, and here's why. Even though we are the pre-flop 3-better, some of the time we're going to have a lot of ace-high or king-high, queen-high type hands here that are going to be air. And if we're betting here 100% of the time with our air, we might be betting too often. Some of the time we're going to want to check this board down with maybe something like 8s, maybe something like a 5x type hand, or maybe even something like ace-queen or ace-king. To balance that range and make us not too exploitable or make our hand not too what we call face up, meaning it's not obvious what we have, I would mix in some checking back with hands like 9-10 that could bluff catch on later streets or get value. One question you have to ask yourself is, can I get value all 3 streets? In this situation, the answer is simply no. Our hand is too weak to get value for all 3 streets, so we have to check 1 street, and a good place to start is generally the flop. If I am going to bet here for balance or for value, I'm going to bet a little bit smaller. Our opponent decided to bet 65, which I think is a little bit too big. I would go with something like 40 here, because if our opponent has air, he's going to fold regardless of our bet size. If he has a hand that beats us, he's also going to call pretty much regardless of our bet size. So there's no reason to really bet that big here. It doesn't accomplish that much. I would want to bet smaller, keeping my range wider, and make myself more difficult to play against. As played, we bet 65, the villain now calls, and we go heads up to the turn. The turn comes of 3 of hearts, completing the flush draw on the flop. Our opponent now bets 100, which is half the pot. And here I think we have a pretty clear call. We definitely can't raise here, and folding is just a little bit too hard to do. We're getting a great price here. It's not like he bet the pot, he bet half the pot, so we're getting a really good price, and we still do beat some hands. He could have something like ace-jack, ace-queen, ace-king with a heart, maybe even something like king-queen with one heart, and be turning his hand into a bluff, coming out barreling on the turn, trying to get us to fold something like ace-high or a small pair or whatever it is. So I think here I would call and then reevaluate on the river. I think after I call this turn, I wouldn't expect my opponent to bluff that many rivers because my range looks pretty strong. It looks like I have an overpair with a heart, maybe a flush, maybe a boat. There's not that many hands that we're calling the turn with that are very, very weak. So I wouldn't expect my opponent to be bluffing the river that often here if the river blanks off. So I think calling in position in the turn and just reevaluating on the river depending on what happens, using live reads, using what you know about your opponent to make a decision, and really try and figure out what he's going to think based on what your call looks like is the best strategy. But in general, I think we have to call here. I wouldn't really have a raising range on this turn. Because I'm calling the turn with a hand like this, I would also call the turn with a flush, I would call the turn with a boat, I would call the turn with overpairs. So my range here on the turn is going to be very balanced, not allowing myself to be too exploited. This is one of the worst hands we're going to call the turn with for value. We might have some bluffs like ace-king with a heart, we might call the turn, but this is one of the worst hands we have for value. So if our opponent does come out barreling on the river, we could probably fold safely, knowing that we have better hands to choose from when deciding whether or not to call. We're going to have overpairs, we're going to have hearts in our hand that block some flushes, so I probably wouldn't be hero calling the river with this particular hand, even though I think it's still a profitable turn call. As played, we call the turn, and let's go to the river. The river comes a 10 of hearts, and now our opponent bets out 200, which is half the pot, leaving himself quite a bit of chips left behind. So this is a spot where we really have to think about what the heck does our opponent have? What is he representing? Well, he's representing something like an ace-high flush or a king-high flush. It's unlikely he has what he has, which are two queens with the queen of hearts, but it's much more likely that he has something like, you know, king queen with a heart. Maybe he turned a flush. He has like king jack of hearts and he's betting for value. Maybe he has the nut flush. That's very possible. He has the nut flush, or he has something, he turned the nut flush, or he could have rivered the nut flush with something like ace queen with a heart and now be betting for value. So I think those are the most likely hands. What's important to note is that our opponent doesn't really have any boats. It's really unlikely he has nines or tens because we blocked that hand. And if he had fives full, he probably would continue checking the turn with that hand as well. Sure, there are three combos of fives full, that's possible. Pocket fives probably is also going to check raise the flop, and as well as pocket threes. So there just aren't that many boats in our opponent's range. Now, what we should do here is really depending on how we're going to approach this situation. If we're going to look at it from like a theory standpoint and say, okay, we have to bluff here some of the time, and we have to choose the worst hands we have to bluff with, plus some blockers, this is a great hand that's in contention for bluffing. We block boats, we can rep boats, and we don't really have many worse hands to choose from. This is really one of the worst hands we're going to wind up on the river with, so it makes a lot of sense to turn that hand into a bluff. Now, what I would actually do in real time is going to depend on who my opponent is. There are definitely some opponents that are playing 1-2 or any size game, and you guys know these players that you've played against, that are just not going to fold for any size bet. They're going to look at their hand and they're going to say, I have a flush, I'm calling, I don't really think about what my opponent has, I'm just playing my own hand. Against those players, it would be ludicrous to bluff, and to use game theory as an excuse to make a play is ridiculous. So you only want to make a move here in this spot if you think your opponent is going to fold the types of hands that he's representing. So you really have to know what hands you can represent, who your opponent is, and what he thinks about you. What level is he thinking on? You don't want to be thinking on the highest level possible and be like, well, I made the right GTO play. You want to be just thinking one level ahead of your opponent. If he's going to give you credit for a full house here, or the nut flush, and he's never going to call you, then I would go ahead and bluff it off. But again, there's not that many opponents that are really capable of folding. There's not a lot of opponents in small stakes games that are amateurs that are capable of folding big hands in spots like these. So I wouldn't necessarily be pulling this trigger unless my opponent is capable of hand reading on a higher level and he's actually going to fold. Some people are scared of the money. Some people don't want to put all their chips in. Those are great players to choose to bluff with in this spot. So that's a little bit of my thought process, and that's what I would go through in real time. I would first say, okay, what's the correct play from a game theory standpoint? And then I would go to the exploitative side and say, well, does that really matter? Should I actually be making that play? And who is the best opponent to make that play against? Does my opponent fall into that category, yes or no? As played, the hero in the hand, a lot of courage in this spot, props to him for even having the balls to make this play, decides to shove all in here. I think that shows that he's a good hand reader and understands theory in poker and understands when is a good spot to pick bluffs. He goes all in here, and the villain does tank for a little while before finally folding. Great spot. It sounds like you picked the right person to bluff in this spot, and congrats on the play. It worked out, and you profited in a big spot in this hand. I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Is this a good spot to bluff? Which types of players would you bluff in this spot? Leave your thoughts in a comment below. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel. More awesome content coming your way. Hand of the Day comes to you every Tuesday at noon, so be sure to stay tuned for more Hand of the Day episodes coming your way on the channel. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.